This is E. Patrick Johnson from Northwestern University, Chair of the African American Studies Department and Professor of Performance Studies. Is it on? Is everybody on? I'm Jacqueline Stewart, and I teach in the Cinema Studies Department at University of Chicago, and I'm curator of Black Cinema House. This is our first collaboration between Black Cinema House and the Harper Theater.
That's the jacket.
It's amazing to have so many of you here. It felt terrible turning a lot of people away. Please tell your friends and family to come see the film. It opens tomorrow. It's sure to do spectacularly well. The reviews so far have been amazing. It's been, well, you all are here, right? Like, you were excited to be here, so you know about the buzz around the film. And it's such a pleasure to have you here, to be able to talk to you about your writing and this project and how it came about. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the relationship between the source material that you wrote and the finished film. How did you get involved with Barry Jenkins, and how did this come together?
Well, hi, thank you guys so much for having me. I apologize, I've been talking all day, so my voice is not as present as it normally is. My name is Tarell McCraney. I wrote the original script for In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue in 2003, the summer of 2003. And it's best to explain that summer in order to explain how that happened, or why that happened, I guess. Also, just know that I am like geeked out by sitting up here with these two distinguished scholars and artists. Their work has informed my work, has spoke to me as a student here. I was at DePaul University. I graduated in 2003. And that same Blue Demons. that same summer, I got accepted to the Yale School of Drama for playwriting, and I also lost my mother. After 10 years of battling HIV, she succumbed to AIDS-related complications that same, less than 30 days later after graduation. And on the heels of that, I was also invited by Peter Brook, a man named Peter Brook, who wrote Mahabharata and Lord of the Flies, to come and tour with him on this new play called The Suit. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because, to me, the juxtaposition of these things is what made In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue necessary. I was supposedly on the precipice of starting a fancy career. And I say fancy in the word of the meaning of fanciful or idyllic for some people. But my mother passing away and struggling for so long, the crack addiction that led her to her HIV diagnosis, the loss of the father figures in my life, I was trying to figure out why I was there. I felt like a survivor. I was having survivor's remorse. I did not feel like I belonged there. I did not feel like I deserved the things that were happening to me. I should have been at my mother's bedside when she gasped her last breath, and I was not. I was in Chicago, learning big things. So I began to write down memories, as many memories as I could, about the life that I had with my mother, the life that I had growing up as a kid in Liberty City in Miami, which is where Moonlight takes place, 305. And I put it away. And at the same time, I was writing a piece called The Brother's Size. So I knew that play was a play and deserved and would go out and do things with it. Moonlight was something that was for me. It was personal. It was never meant to be a quote-unquote play. It was always visually instincted. It always had these elements in mind. And I put it away. I literally put it in the corner, and sometimes I would drag it out and wrestle with it. And one time in a course at Yale, I brought it out and, sort of put it together in a more concise. That's actually not the best word, because what happens is the original structure was circular. So take all three of those chapters that you saw, and overlay them. And that's how the original script was. You would kind of bounce back and forth between all of those worlds. and watching these three different people and realizing that they were one life. Barry got a hold of that in around 2012 because there was a corporation, a film corporation still is, called Borscht, a film company that was dedicated to bringing the expat Miamians who had gone off to become artists. We have, unlike Chicago, we have a huge brain drain, right? All of our talent goes to Chicago to become famous, or to New York, or LA. And we leave there and never come back with the cultural riches that we took from it. And so this group was really adamant about bringing those voices back. So they brought Barry back to do Chlorophyll after he did Medicine for Melancholy, which was his first feature film. And brought me back to do this piece called The Bus, but they also read In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. And what I didn't know, or what August Wilson used to talk about all the time, which is that sometimes the play knows more about you than you know about it. And so the piece spoke to Barry because we grew up 3 blocks away from each other, never met each other. We were only 10 months apart in age. We went to the same schools, had similar friends, both became artists, and both had mothers who were drug addicts. Both had mothers who were HIV positive. And never knew each other until 3 years ago. And so he read this script and was like, who is this? He says it all the time. He's like, who? Somebody done. FBI.
Like a killing me softly moment.
Yeah, FBI done crept up on me somehow. They done infiltrated. So he talks about it in terms of, and he says often, and then I quote him in saying that, he says, Tarell took pieces of my memories and made them a dream. And I wish that were the case. I took pieces of my memory and turned them into the best shape of recollection that I could. And so he said, look, I see what you're trying to do here with this jumping back and forth in time. I see this is a memoir of a person. This is Sharon's story. Let me do what this Ho Xiao Shin did in 3 times and do 3 chapters. I think we can give them the space that they need to live. And I said, okay, God be with you. I became a MacArthur Fellow that same year, and so it became really difficult for us to work on it face to face. But we were still in contact about it. And when he showed me the final script, I was like, whoa, if you make this, I don't know if I'm gonna be around to see it. He was like, yeah, no, it'll be great. And so then they started shooting. Again, everything was just about making sure that the authenticity of Miami was still there. We really just wanted to represent, we were 2 boys from Liberty City who wanted to shout out our team. And even though Barry doesn't identify as queer and I don't identify as straight, we still had so much overlap that we felt like we were telling our authentic story. And so that's how we got here.
So I'm not gonna ask an academic question.
No, ask.
As people expect me to do. I'm a big fan of your work, and I've seen almost everything produced, and my favorite of your oeuvre is Choir Boy. What struck me about this play, now adapted to film, was how you deal with male intimacy. Because to me, what this film is about more than a gay identity is about humans seeking intimacy. And I think it comes together at the end when Sharon says, "You're the only man who's touched me." And I think for a lot of Black, and I'm gonna be specific about gender here, Black men who don't identify as straight, but whose performance of masculinity is not stereotypical. Negotiating intimacy is very difficult.
Sure.
And yet, in your other plays, I'm thinking of Choir, but I'm also thinking about Marcus or The Secret of Sweet. Sexuality is a little more heightened, in more explicit. So in thinking about this play, that you said was very personal, I saw the difference, you know, between those other plays I mentioned and this play and now the film. Talk a little bit about how you deal with representing sexuality in a non-identitarian way, that is not about a gay identity per se, but it's not about straightness either.
Sure. I mean, I can only deal with identity with the powers I have, and I am other. I am queer in that way. So there are very few ways that I can make a narrative and leave that out completely. It's just silly. It's try to. Similarly, I think what's important about what you just laid out was a landscape of my own identification. I didn't become gay until after I'd written in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. And the reason why I say that is because my identification of gay was when I was like, oh, I know what gay means to me. I know what faggot meant when they called me it when I was a kid, or I had to learn what that meant. But that had to do with a sexuality that I wasn't even interested in at the time, right? And even in high school, I was always the kid who was like making out with girls, making out with boys, making out with girls and boys at the same time. I mean, and I don't say that to boast, because that's not boastful. I could have got mono. But
or some other things.
Or some other things, surely. But at the same time, what I couldn't wrap my brain around was what I was actually after, right? Sexual attraction or attraction is human. It goes across the spectrum over our lifetimes. We become drawn closer or further away from things in life. But intimacy was something that I always innately felt towards men. And I couldn't understand, I was trying to put that understanding together. Why? What was I looking for in that intimacy? Why was I had a best friend in undergrad who is still my best friend, and you mentioned Choir Boy. AJ is based on him. He's straight identifying, and I am my most affectionate with him. People would be like, y'all are together. And he'd be like, no, I'm engaged to a girl. But I hug him, and so that intimacy was the question. I was trying to figure out where that came from. How did I get here in it? And I had to trace it back to Blue, who the character Juan is based on. Blue was the drug dealer who was dating my mother at the time. I was 5 years old. When my first memories happened around that time. He was always in them. And he was affectionate to me. And I loved him, and I was his son as far as anybody was concerned, as far as he was concerned. He treated me like I was his blood. He treated me better than my own father, who was and is still in my life. I remember having him, he was the first hug I ever received. The first time a man told me they loved me was him. He taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me how to swim. He protected me from my mother. If she was upset about something, wanted to beat me, he'd be like, nah, don't hit him. That's little man, you don't hit him. And I remember that. I remember that protection. So and then I remember that loss. I remember coming home from school. I keep saying school, but I know it couldn't have been school, because I remember it was a weekend and I was away. My mom had sent me to either somebody's house, and I got back and she sat me down on the bed and she said, Blue's gone. And he had been shot and killed. And I never saw him again. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't see a picture I never saw him again. And that was just it. And one of the things that Barry wanted to make sure that we felt, and it's interesting doing this right next to Under the Gun, which is happening next door, about gun violence, but Barry was interested in the shooting because we know that that's graphically teleported about black men being shot all the time. What we don't know, what we often lack or are missing, is the thing that I viscerally feel, and I hope comes through in the film, which is that loss. When it's just gone, and you ain't seen him no more, and he ain't coming back, right? August Wilson has that great line in 7 Guitars. It's like, he ain't here no more. He up there somewhere. And And that to me was what this piece was about. It was at a time that I was trying to figure out what that intimacy meant. Why wasn't I that intimate with my mother? And why couldn't I have been? I don't know. I don't know the answer to those things. But so that, I think, to me, it's about talking about that kind of intimacy between fathers and sons, and friends. That's what I was about to say. Fathers and sons, friends, lovers, not lovers, kind of lovers. I mean, there's a rubric in there that we don't quite see. And I think the more we pretend that it doesn't exist, the more harmful it is for all of us. Because we sort of silo ourselves into we cut off the ability. First of all, this sort of hyper-masculinity is actually homophobia, but more so anti-feminism at work and misogyny at work. And it teaches us to hate our nurturing spirits, and that men do have. And so in order for us to stop talking, if we stopped showing that, it was important to me to show it, and I know it was important to Barry because he kept saying, you know, he says all the time, a black drug dealer in a movie is just that. That's all he ever does is a black drug dealer. We never see his family. We never see, you know, what got him into the game. We never see how he prays. And Mahershala Ali, who plays Juan, figured, he was like, if I come and play this role, I'm gonna know how Juan prays. I mean, he improv that line about how's your mom doing? Keep her in my prayers. To just illustrate, I pray. I may not do the thing that you think or ascribe to as the most highest calling, but I do pray to a God. I have to answer for these things I do on this earth, which I think all of us who came to the story felt it was important to tell.
I just have